right, thanks everybody for showing up. We're waiting just a little bit for the last person to show up, so Rusty, thanks for getting here. Close enough on time. Thanks for coming out again. Hope you can get a lot out of this evening on the program. I've definitely got some things listed out we're going to talk about. And then another section is where we're going to go through and maybe highlight some issues that either worked on and got passed or followed because you became interested. There's an issue that passed this year that wasn't mine. I was glad we got it done, but I know we've all got issues like that may not have gotten done or got across the finish line that didn't make headlines. So with that, first off, we're going to start with prayer, just like we do in the Capitol every day. I'm going to ask Representative Brian Seitz to lead us in prayer.
Dan, let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father, thank you for time and opportunity to gather, to discuss the issues of the day. I ask that you would guide our hearts, guide our minds, so that discussion might be civil and that we can find commonality even in disagreement. Father, guide us and protect us in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. And then Mr. Charlie Guthrie will come up and lead us in the pledge. For those you don't know, Mr. Charlie is a 53-year long member of the American Legion and one proud American.
Would you please join me in reciting our pledge to our great flag? If there are veterans in the group this evening, it is appropriate for you to wear your hat and render the salute that we are honored to do. The rest, please remove your head here. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So for tonight, kind of the reason I got some people together, I did a legislative update in Clay County earlier this year, and obviously Clay County is bigger than Saline County, so there's a lot more elected officials up there, and there was a group of about 5 of us that did the legislative update. Not all of us voted the same, not all of us thought the same, and I thought that we gave a pretty doggone good update because we got to talk about the issues. They voted this way, I voted this way, here's why I thought that way, here's why they thought that way. I thought it was a really good deal. So the next thing is how do we keep the train on the tracks? And that's why I brought Scott Faughn in. He runs Missouri Times in Jefferson City. He's there every single day in the Capitol talking about the issues with different electeds, both sides of the party, both sides of the aisle. And I feel like that he's probably the best one to walk us through all these different issues and get us through the night. So with that, I'll turn it over to Scott.
Well, I want to thank you guys so much for having me here. It's an honor. I'm a hillbilly from down in the Boot Hill that owns a newspaper and hosts a TV show in Jeff City. I get to sit in the peanut gallery and watch these guys do what they do. And it's a great honor to do that. And it's really an honor to be here. I love this town. I love the Wonder Dog. This is one of my favorite parts of Missouri, and I'm very honored you have me here tonight. But let me introduce, before we get into talking, obviously you all know Senator Gregory, and thank you again. It's a terrific turnout and a great idea. Mark Nolte from here in town, thank you so much for making the time. And tell folks that may not know you, I know that's your first term, a little about yourself.
Yeah, Mark Nolte. I actually live in Higginsville. I grew up in Higginsville. Land surveyor by trade, kind of worked this area as well as Lafayette County, and I pretty well stayed there. In my first term as a representative, and very interesting time I've had this year. Looking forward to next year and being able to discuss these issues tonight. Thank you.
And we are very fortunate to have Rusty Black from over in Chillicothe. He is now the new chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee. Senator, thank you so much for coming over.
Thank you very much. I'm, as Scott said, from Chillicothe, so my late arrival, I left home early enough, but 3 stops on 65 if anybody's driving north. Some of you may know that we're resurfacing and also had to put some new rails along bridges, etc., because too many semis have been hitting them, I guess, hauling grain. So it took a little while to get here. I'm a retired ag teacher. I taught ag at a little place called Notte, Grand Maitland, Skidmore, south of Maryville for 5 years. Then I moved to Chillicothe and taught ag there for 28 years. I'm retired. My wife has continued to stay married to me. We've celebrated 43 years together. I celebrated, she didn't. We have 4 children. They are all grown, and 3 of them are back fairly close to us. One lives down here by the Clydesdales off of I-70. So I have 10 living grandchildren. That's about what people need to know. I'm not very smart, because I'm a hick from Murder. You call yourself a hick.
That's trademark infringement right there. Your wife, though, is a wonderful lady, very long-suffering, and the patience of Joe, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I do. Scott, I want to throw this part in, because I know Senator Gregory represents a lot of property, but I do represent the largest district in the state, so it's 18 full counties and part of Buchanan County, so it's larger, I think, than 8 states in the United States, the area in which I represent.
And we are fortunate to have all the way up from Branson, one of the absolute most well-regarded legislators in the entire House. Brian Seitz, thank you for coming up.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm 2 days younger, yes, than Rusty. No, I appreciate being here. I just got back I'm on the State Tourism Commission, as well as the chair of the Tourism Committee in the House, so I spent the past 3 days at Lake of the Ozarks learning even more about Missouri and how to market Missouri as a destination. And one of the people that I met over those past 3 days was Rebecca Adams. She's your newly minted tourism director, someone that has a heart for this community, a willingness to share what you have here in Marshall and the surrounding areas with those that might be, quote, passing through and so forth. She encouraged me earlier in the day to go to the downtown area, and I did. And I thought, when I saw the structures there, the older houses on the right-hand side, and the uniqueness of some of the things that are being displayed at the church there, and I walked around the square, and I went in some of the shops. This could easily be America's small town. And I think she's going to do an excellent job as a tourism director, so I'm glad to be here this evening.
And on the end there, we're very fortunate to have Brandon Phelps, a person who like Mark's in his first term, someone you're going to hear a lot about throughout the state during his career in the House. Thanks for driving over.
Thanks, sir. Yes, Brandon Phelps. I represent the upper 2/3 of Johnson County, all of the city of Warrensburg. Like Mark, I'm in my first term, and we've just completed our first year in the legislature, so definitely we saw a lot, we learned a lot, it was interesting, and look forward to continuing on. I'm a small business owner, my wife's a physician in Warrensburg, and good friends with Senator Gregory, and I appreciate him inviting me and all of us here tonight, and I appreciate the folks of Marshall having us here, so thank you.
Let's start off before we go too far. You know, there's a lot of issues you see in the news or you see on television talked about or on the internet. But Brandon, let me ask you, your first year here, give me something to talk about that maybe folks weren't paying as close of attention to, didn't get too many headlines, but it's very important to the state.
Well, I guess there is a laundry list of those things that probably people weren't maybe aware of or talking about. You know, something you and I talked about one day on one of your shows, and maybe a lot of people don't realize this, but the legislature actually filed 2,700 bills this year. And so anytime someone asks, you know, to speak about something interesting, well, there's a lot to draw from. Now obviously we weren't able to discuss all those, and calendar and timing is an issue. But you know, a lot of the hot topic issues that came before us this year, those were things that we actually voted on, and you know, there's not a whole lot of things hiding behind the scenes. Now, I will tell you that I had a couple pieces of legislation that came through committee with a lot of success, but because of calendar and time, they didn't get to where necessarily I wanted those to be. So I'm going to be pushing on those next year. One of them was my driver's license bill. My driver's license bill requires that the sex identification on your driver's license match the sex identification on your birth certificate. Seems like common sense to me. It's something that I'm going to be pushing really hard on in this coming year. The other was I had my Chinese tutoring bill, had a lot of support in committee, but just ran out of time, wasn't able to get it across the finish line. But that bill simply states that a school district needs to notify students and parents when that school district has contracted with a foreign entity to tutor those kids. And it does happen quite a bit throughout the state. And so I had a bill to provide some transparency for that, and I look forward to pushing both of those bills in this coming year.
Thank you very much. Brian, you're in the news all the time. Give me something you're working on that maybe folks don't know a lot about.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a bill, I drafted the legislation that no one's heard of yet. It's an act against abusive website access litigation. What am I talking about when I say that? There's I'll call him this, there's a shyster lawyer in Kansas City that's going on websites, and they're going to local chambers of commerce looking for businesses, small mom and pops or large businesses, and he's going to their websites and suing them for being non-compliant with the Americans Disabilities Act. He's got a gentleman that lives in his backyard that happens to be blind. And if you don't have something on your website, you may be here, you have a small business advertising on the internet and so forth, and you don't have sound to go with that this gentleman would click on, he's suing you as a small business between $4,000 and $40,000. You'll get something in the internet or through the mail saying, if you don't pay this, you're being sued by so-and-so, you're non-compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act. And what would you call it? I can't remember the actual term right now. It's litigation that shouldn't be happening. And frivolous, that's the word I was looking for. It's frivolous suing, and he's going after you. He's going after small business owners. And I've got some legislation that's going to stop people like him from doing that sort of thing to harm you and harm small business.
Senator Black, obviously love to know something you worked on that maybe wasn't talked about a lot, but if you could also maybe give folks a look into what the state finances are going to be like next year.
Okay, Scott, we'll do state finances second, because on the way down here, I thought maybe we'd talk about something that we had a touch in, whether it's individual or got passed, that we think will make a difference, but nobody in this crowd even knows that it occurred. So my middle sister, I'm the oldest in the family, my middle sister changed jobs and is a principal now in Northwest Missouri, and her son coaches football at the same school, and their family's been there. They've been state playoffs a lot. Her husband coached there, etc. Well, my sister had a student commit suicide last night, and my nephew is the football coach of this young person, and my brother and my brother and I share some farming equipment. He was talking about that on the way down. And what, my sister may wish to the world she didn't change jobs. She would stay where she was at after that, because she's going to be somebody that she's going to take that to heart, that she was responsible. And I'm glad she's that way, but she's not responsible. I have a friend who told him so. So last year, two things passed. I think they're going to have can have a tremendous impact on our young people in schools. Told you I taught 33 years, I was in school, I was a kid that bullied somebody, and I was bullied, and I deserve to be bullied because my mouth wouldn't shut up. But the world has changed. Kids have changed. If you don't believe that, then you're the one that's wrong. Okay? I hate to say that, but you're wrong. We passed two bills, Scott. You may remember the cell phone bill. Some people know that one. that outlawed cell phones, made 2 of my grandchildren out of the 10 a little PO'd about Grandpa was proud of that, and I'll come to their school and brag about it at a school assembly if they want me to.
I got a daughter that's not a fan. I told her it's all Mike Henderson's fault.
That is one of the great things we did that's going to, it will have an impact, I believe, people do it. And then the second thing, and Brian helped with this, several people, it's bipartisan bill. People are scared to have chaplains in schools anymore because of years and years of litigation, etc. I'm not really sure that we should be scared of doing that, having chaplains in school, but we passed a bill in the state to allow schools to either accept by volunteer or they can hire chaplains to serve in the schools. And the reason why I'm taking so long to say this, in schools throughout the Western Hemisphere where chaplains serve, within 2 years, homicides and suicides with students go to 0. So I hope that us as community members around here, if you're on school boards, let's not be scared of doing that. Let's give that an opportunity. People are willing to do it. Would it help this young man yesterday? None of us know that answer. But it's sure in the world not going to hurt people. You know, there are people that think that if we put chaplains in school, it's going to hurt people, but I don't agree with that. State budget, I'll do that real quick. I know some of you would much prefer I talk about it than anything else, but our state budget, we went through 6 years. I've been on the budget committee in the House, appropriation committee in the Senate since I've come into the Senate in the House 2017. The first year I was there, we were pretty tight, really tight-fisted. We were even discussing taking real dollars away, not slow down the expansion, taking real dollars away when Dragon was first elected. And in 2018, we released a little bit, and then when COVID hit and things around COVID, and we did a wise job in our state of holding on money in the right places and doing stuff. So we've spent 6 years doing a lot of projects around our state and funding things. And our budget's got up to $50-some billion. And how many people in here own a business? Anybody? No? Anybody in here do budgeting themselves? I want to know that. But a lot of people don't anymore. I had to. I'm poor. I'm an ag teacher and farm. We know there's a difference between budget and how much your cash flow expense. So we were budgeting 50 to 52 billion, and we were spending in the 30s, is what we were spending. You got to go through a long class to understand reappropriate and all those kind of things, but we're going to spend down some money, but we're going to take real general revenue, that's your tax dollars, what you and I probably consider sales tax, income tax, a few other taxes. Those dollars grew like this, even as we were doing what? Cutting taxes in our state, right? While I've been there, we've cut your income tax, cut capital gains tax, blah, 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 blah. And they still were going up. Well, they're flattening out. So Scott, here's the answer. It's going to be a little tighter than it has been the last 6 years. And some people think I'll be the most hated guy in Jeff City in about 4 years. So we'll see.
I think he'll make it. Representative Nolte, first year up there, give folks your take on what you saw and maybe something that didn't get the attention it deserved.
Well, it was a very interesting year. If you've never had the experience to do it, you obviously, I mean, you can go visit, but when you live there for a term, the door of the sausage factory gets kicked open and you're turning the crank. And that has been really interesting. So, relationships have been really fortunate for me. I've made some good relationships. As far as legislation, it's very difficult for a freshman legislator to really get things moving. I did file several bills that I think are good. I had one interesting thing happen this summer. I like to work on old tractors, and I was doing that on the weekend. Had my pickup truck parked outside. Somebody drove up and they said, "Hey, you're a representative." I said, "Yeah." He said, "I've got an idea for a bill." I said, What do you got?" He said, "Well, my wife died here a couple of weeks ago." I said, "Well, I'm sorry to hear that." He said, "What I'm really interested in is I don't want anybody to have the opportunity to use her name to vote." And I said, that's a good idea. I said, I'll follow through with that. So ideas like that from constituents have always been good. And I've got some other ideas that are coming to me. I don't have all the best ideas, but I do have some good bills, I think, that hopefully will make some traction this year. I took over a couple of Senator Gregory's bills from last session ago. We were able to prop up the city of Waverly being an apple capital, and the city of Concordia being a patriotic mural city of the state. If you've not been to Concordia, it's worth a drive through. They've got some outstanding murals. And the wonderful thing about it is, you think, well, yeah, they painted a mural, and maybe here in 10 years they're going to be some sand. Well, that was bad. But they've got the budget. They've budgeted not only to paint the mural, but to maintain the mural. I think that's really important. So I don't know, I'm looking forward to the next session. It'll be right around the corner, and hopefully I'll be able to get some of the bills that I filed last year, refiled, and push a little further.
And Top Flight Oktoberfest in Concordia.
Exactly. Yeah.
Senator, you almost had a whole calendar to yourself with your legislation last session. Give me a couple things that maybe didn't get a lot of attention.
I'm glad Mark mentioned the Waverly and Concordia piece, because I've been working on that for, I think this was the third year for it. So glad we got that across the finish line. A lot of times you file a piece of legislation and you think this will be simple. Easy peasy, we'll get it done. Another one of those that I thought was going to be simple is going to be going to its fourth year. I might lose some people with this one, but it's one that I've actually found out our county health directors across the state are looking forward to this getting across the finish line. Our county health directors have a piece in how septic systems get installed in homes out in the countryside. And right now, you have to do something called a percolation test. The percolation test measures how much water the soil can handle. But more oftentimes than not, they have to then go request a soil morphology test, which costs more money. You got to pay for the percolation test, and then you got to pay for the morphology test. This would get rid of the percolation test requirement and make the morphology test requirement the base standard when installing septic systems that are monitored by our local county health directors. It's a big mouthful. I said, where is this coming from? Unspent funds. But then as I've talked to some of our county health directors across the state, they're like, we really need to get this done because it's costing a lot of people some unnecessary money. Another bill that's been front and center that got passed this year, I'm sure Representative Seitz is going to touch on the bigger reason for it, but Senate Bill 52 carried by Senator Rick Bratton out of Cass County. As I've talked about earlier in the year, I've said this is going to happen at some point in time. Well, it has happened, folks. So Senate Bill 52 now allows the Secretary of State to get 3 shots to rewrite summary ballot language on issues that are going before the voters. So this year we passed a abortion, I'll call it recall, for Amendment 3 to put that back on the ballot. The summary language was found, I guess, unconstitutional or unruly. The judge didn't like it, and so found in favor of the people for the lawsuits. And so our Secretary of State, which is who? Anybody in the crowd? Denny Hoskins, who is also a member of what? The Republican Party, got a chance to rewrite the ballot language. Well, he failed the first time because the judge found it still not to be up to stuff. But on the second try, the judge said, that is good ballot language. This is going to go on the ballot this way. So what we put out there wasn't good enough, but the Secretary of State, who is a Republican, who's on our side, got a chance to rewrite it. Why that's important? Because before we passed that piece of legislation, the judges in the court system got to rewrite that summary ballot language. So that's one that I don't think got picked up by a lot of people, but we just saw it in real time and the effect that that's going to have.
Yeah, I actually don't even think Amendment 3 would have passed if you had any kind of fair ballot language. But a very liberal judge in Cole County wrote it, and it was what it was. We may skip the break, and let's just get into some of these issues, and then we'll take some questions. The first one, Representative Seitz, because it's in the news, talk about the abortion legislation that you worked on.
Absolutely. I was the House handler for HJR 73, which is the repeal and replacement of Amendment number 3. I want to make it perfectly clear that life begins at conception. And we know that. I know that as a Christian. We know that scientifically. Science has proven that. But in the state of Missouri, the people needed to have a voice. What happened in changing our Constitution with the previous Amendment 3 is it went way too far. It removed the protections for women, such as if the abortive procedure was botched. The doctors now, currently in the state of Missouri, do not have to have hospital admitting privileges. A woman could bleed out. That was part of our state law that Amendment 3 removed. And that's something that we're going to put back in with this new legislation, is provide for the protections for women. Women have to be protected. We're going to provide protections for the infant in the womb. Now, after I say that, I started off with life begins at conception, because it does. But most people who entered the voting booth and that voted for Amendment number 3 were thinking this: rape, incest, and life of the mother. And that's what they were thinking when they voted for the previous Amendment number 3 to change our Constitution. They were not voting to remove safety protections for women. They were not voting for abortion on demand up until 9 months as the baby's head is crowning. That's not what people who voted for Amendment number 3 previously were looking at, but that's what they got. This legislation that's going to be on the ballot provides for those horrible instances of rape and incest and the dangerous instances of life of the mother. We need to protect that woman, but we need to protect the infant in the womb at the same time. There's also, and I think Scott was probably going to ask me a piece of this new ballot language. It's very clear about what it does, protecting women who have medical emergencies, ectopic pregnancies, miscarriages, and so forth. Those things need to be taken care of. But the amendment also will prohibit sex change procedures on children. I think it's monstrous. I mean, anybody with a lick of common sense, a boy is a boy and a girl is a girl. That's how God made them. You don't remove their private parts or give them hormone or testosterone blocking drugs to try to create something else out of that small child. It's Frankensteinian. And we're going to protect those kids from these transition surgeries. Now, if you're 18 years old and that's your bag and that's what you want to do, you know, God bless you, and work it out between you and your family and so forth. But we are going to protect the kids through this new Amendment number 3.
Let's talk about, there was a couple of bills that kind of look to the future, and they did get some attention. One is the utility bill, to start increasing the generation of power in the state. Who wants to talk about that?
So the utility bill, I know that was, for those that were back there a couple of weeks ago, that was brought up and talked about a little bit, and we know how that went. But I think it's probably important to go over a few provisions of that. I don't know that all of us voted the same on that one. But I think it's important, as I was saying there that day, the information that was before us in that hearing or through those hearings and many, many meetings in our office is Missouri was going to become more of an energy-dependent state as we went on. Missouri didn't have enough generating capacity to meet the future needs of what the state was showing. I believe it was 2 years ago when I was on House Budget, Economic Development Director Hadaway was testifying before the committee, and I said, what do we need to do to draw more business to the state of Missouri? And she said, we need more shovel-ready sites that have capable electricity, because those are hard to come by. So starting at that, and then looking forward was, I think the CWIP or quit provision is probably the thing that catches the most controversy inside this legislation. What that stands for is construction works in progress. So when that was explained to me, is how it works right now. If a utility company, i.e. Evergy, Ameren, want to build a new power plant, let's say it costs $1 billion, they could go take out a loan, however long it takes to build that power plant with interest. Let's say at the end of the day it's $1.2 billion at the end of the day. They then go to the Public Service Commission to seek a rate increase to cover the cost of construction with interest. So rates, they would likely get that, rates are going to go up. Another thing that would happen is they say, we're going to be fine, we'll just buy electricity off the grid. Whenever that happens, no matter what the grid cost is, that is an immediate pass-through to the consumer without PSC hearing whatsoever. 100% pass-through to the customer. Who remembers the winter storm back in 2021? And what happened down in Texas? Okay, down in Texas, electrical prices off the grid that day, or during that week, peaked at around $4,393 per megawatt hour. We buy our electricity in kilowatts, this is the megawatt price of what I can find, but that figures to around $4 per kilowatt hour, or $130 per day extra in those high peak demand times. As I said, immediate pass through to the consumer. So if we were reaching a point in time in high demand, hot weather, cold weather, and they were buying off the market, your rates are going to go through the roof, and again, 100% pass through. Or the third option that was planned before me to put new power generation online is construction works in progress. That means that $1 billion power plant that they want to build, they go to the PSC, they seek approval, your rates will increase to cover the cost of that $1 billion power plant, not the $1.2 billion that it might cost with interest. So when I looked at all of that, I looked at and thought, I'm an energy customer myself. I got it out at the farm, that's what my grandkids run off of. The smartest thing to me at that point in time is to ensure that rates would increase. The absolute slowest would be to vote for the provisions that have the construction works in progress. Now, some other good things that we put in there for consumer protection, we were starting with the smart meters. I guess that's where the power company can just read it from wherever. The smart meters, you can now opt out of smart meters. I think Evergy came out with something called time of use rates a couple of years ago. You can now also opt out of time of use rates. And those are just a couple of things that were big that we added to it. Brent's got to see over here nodding head a little bit. But those are the real true reasons why I looked at that going, we need the electricity here. They said it at the Economic Development Conference a couple of days ago. Energy is the next big demand. Demand was flat for a long time, but we now see it increasing because, I mean, we can say President Trump is bringing business back to the United States. They want to build factories, they want to build manufacturing centers, and so we're going to need electricity. But that was a very big one that I know there was a lot of controversy, but for me at the end of the day it was, I know when I get home and I flip the switch, I want the light to come on, all my air conditioner will work, just like everybody in the room does.
Yes, just to talk about that, I want to share something with you. Because of social media, someone in their basement on their keyboard is saying that, you know, you're not a Republican if you vote this way on that specific issue, or you're a rhino if you vote this way, or you're ultra-right if you vote that way. This is an instance where we as Republicans can agree to disagree. I voted no on SB 4. That doesn't make me more of a Republican, more of a conservative, and or less of a conservative. We can disagree about issues and keep the main thing the main thing. As Republicans, we believe in life. We believe in Second Amendment rights. We believe in lowering and or eliminating certain taxes. But just because you vote this way or that way on one specific issue, you may, based on your constituency and where you live and so forth, vote the way that would be appropriate for your constituency. What I've done is I went to and had a meeting with the CEO of Algonquin Utilities. They own Liberty. Liberty is going to attempt to raise the rates by 40% on the consumer. And because Liberty Electric is raising rates, some municipalities are going to raise the water rates because their electric bill is higher to clean the water and so forth. So you're going to have a 60% increase on utility rates. So I went to the CEO of Algonquin. We met for 45 minutes. He's a big national, internationally known figure. And I said, we're not going to do it. Our attempt is to protect the consumer. Some people on here have done that through SB4, looking off into the future and seeing that we're going to have power generation needs in the state of Missouri 15, 20, 30 years down the road, and we better start working on it now. I totally agree with that perspective, but I'm looking at it a little bit more narrowly. I'm going to protect, and I think everyone else up here is going to protect you by having lower utility rates. And just because we may vote differently on a specific issue, it doesn't make someone any greater or lesser.
I got one.
Well, you might have heard a little bit on the microphone. The two of us are really close in age, even though he's a lot better looking and looks a lot younger. But we've worked together on several pieces of legislation over the last few years, and most of the time, guess who gets to play bad cop when we go into the room? But we have it worked out, and we've got some pretty good stuff done. This is something the two of us are, we voted different, but like Brian said, there's so much stuff in that bill. It is, you know, you can find your stuff that you want to be opposed to. I carried the quit part. I had the individual just quit file. I've been working on energy policy stuff, all in the electricity column, for about 4 years. And I've traveled to meetings on the East Coast, I've traveled to meetings south, I've never went to the West. And I sit in a room when we talk about nuclear, where the federal nuclear regulator is sitting on here, and I'm the IOU, independent electrical company, wanting to put nuclear in, and the government can keep me from getting that done. And that's what's ended up happening. So for those of you that are long in tooth, as I am, you may recognize that we've done nothing for electrical generation other than wind and solar. And I don't have to say that I hate it or like it, either one, for the last 30 plus years, right? That's where the federal government, that's where all the programs have put it. And we have reached a point in the state of Missouri, we don't have dispatchable. That's electric power that we can turn on because we're closing all the what plants. Yeah. So if we're going to have it, we're going to have to do something with dispatchable power. I thought EQIP, it does have sunsets in it. If you really look at the legislation and you're crazy enough to try to figure out all that lawyer talk, I have to have it explained to me still. There's sunsets on it for an X period of time. I think it's 32 or 35 is the sunset that I was the one who made the agreement. Put on there, so if this ends up causing what Brian's talking about, causes rates to skyrocket, I don't believe it's going to, because I believe Missouri Public Service still makes the decision on what our electric bill is. The rate increase is going to still have to go through our Missouri Public Service agency. But anyway, if it causes a problem, then it sunsets it. The other thing was, and many other things within utilities, you could already do this QUIP program that both of these two have talked about a little bit. But for some reason, natural gas plants, a few years ago, and I think it was while in the legislature, they were cut out and said you couldn't do it anymore. And it had to do with Senator, you remember all the speeches? Yep. I won't mention names, but that's why I got put in there. I'm the one that was part of taking it out of there. Some of you in this room, if you know SB4, you know is it only about electricity? No. It has all kinds of things. Water in my 19 counties is a problem, folks, because we're over-regulating all my little water districts, all my little towns out of being able to do it. They're going to have, I hope not, but they're going to end up going to the regulated size, or we're not going to have water. Some of you may know there are cities in my place that the sewer rate's higher than the electric rate and the water rate because of things, on regulations. I thought it was a good thing. I followed it all the way through. My bills were filed. So if that big one died, maybe we could pull up my bills, and they're not mine, but the people I work with. and be able to try to get those through the legislature so we get some of those pieces done. I know that's longer than you wanted.
No, I'll answer your question myself, you don't mind. I mean, we're gonna run out of power, right? That's just a fact. The state will run out of power. You gonna generate it and pay wholesale, or you gonna go buy it retail, right?
I have a son-in-law, you know, I got 2 grandchildren upset with me over cell phones in school. I've got a son-in-law that lives by the Clydesdales, upset with his father-in-law because we're doing this. Because guess what he sells? Generators, and a hell of a bunch of them. Because people, maybe not people in this group, some of you are his customers because I know he comes to Marshall, but he's selling generators because people are scared. If you got $10,000, $15,000, you want electricity, he's putting generators in all over the place because many of us do have enough sense to know that electricity is starting to be a problem.
I bet it's easier to have a son-in-law mad at you than your granddaughters, right?
You are right. Much easier.
I think another thing you mentioned on that quick portion, I guess, there is a clawback involved. So if they say that it's going to be $1 billion plant and it ends up costing more, or correct me if I'm wrong, Senator, it goes over time to get put on, all those additional rates are going to get paid back to that customer. So they have to build it on, as the union contractors say, on time, on budget, and in good shape and working fashion. So,
Well, they don't stand for approval.
and then another portion of this was talking about if dispatchable power comes offline, these utility companies are going to have at least that much power going online. There is a plant in St. Louis area called Rush Island. It's a coal generating facility. It came offline earlier than they wanted it to. But Ameren spent I think it was a 13 or 14 years long battle with the federal court system on the Clean Air Act. So they tried telling the federal government, no, we feel like we're grandfathered in. It was built before the Clean Air Act went into place, but they made some modifications to it. And so the Fed said, well, now the Clean Air Act applies to you all 100%. You all have to get in compliance. And they said, no, we don't. And they fought the court system for 13 years. And one day the federal court system said, you got to shut down now, or it's going to be a whole lot of money that you're going to have to pay. So they've tried to fight that federal court system. They didn't win, and that plant now has to shut down.
Speaking of power running out in the state, talk about the water legislation.
Water Preservation Act, that was probably for ag groups this year, a keystone piece of legislation that they're working on for a couple of years. Finally got it across the finish line. I think a huge shout out goes out to Attorney General Andrew Bailey. I know he was instrumental in helping craft that legislation. Senator Jason Dean, Senator Jamie Berger, down from the Boot Hill where you can see for like 35 miles because it's so flat, down where Scott's from.
Yeah.
But they do irrigate a lot down there. Senator Berger said at one point in time that some city in Arizona contacted, I think it was in Seitz or Cape, and they wanted to ship a unit train of water out west every single day because water is becoming such a scarce resource out there. Missouri law, as it stood before the Water Preservation Act, was if I were to go to multiple bin bottles, buy 10 acres next to the railroad tracks, drill a 1,000-foot well, and start shipping water to California for purposes of drinking, recreation, you name it, whatever, I had the 100% sole right to do so. And maybe if your 500-foot well's dried up, you might be able to win a court case against me, but I would just say you need to dig your wells deeper. You're not going to be able to irrigate your crops anymore. Same thing that happened down in Boot Hill. The Kansas State governor talked in their state address about how they need water because their aquifers are getting lower and how they wanted to maybe import water from the state of Missouri. So the door was wide open for Missouri's water resources to get robbed. Under this piece of legislation that got passed, as I mentioned, the Attorney General held right. Now there has to be a permitting process from the Attorney General or through DNR, and then that's monitored by the Soil and Clean Water Commission, which is made up of farmers across the state of Missouri. So now if I were to go buy that same 10 acres in Multibid along the railroad tracks and drill a well and start shipping water to California, that goes on my permit, and guess what? DNR says, nope, because the end use of that is recreation in California. So it's a very good thing to put into place. The example I use, if you move to a high crime area and your house doesn't have a security system, are you going to put one in before you get robbed or after? Which one do you think you want to do? I'm putting one in before I get robbed.
Let's talk about a thing that I think is going to really matter to folks, and that's now Farm Bureau is allowed to offer some health plans. That's going to change the, talk about business budget, that's going to change the budget for a lot of folks. Go right ahead.
Might as well.
We're in your town.
We're in my town, that's right. Okay, Farm Bureau health plans. Again, this was one of those that the first year I got it, the legislation was one piece of paper. That's what got brought to me for the idea, for them to sell health plans. The Affordable Care Act came online, better affectionately known as Obamacare, and we all know what that led to, increased health premiums for a lot of people. I will say that there are a lot more lives covered now, so I kind of had to change my tune on that as I was going through the state capitol. But the affordability of it went away. Well, the state of Tennessee, for 75 plus years, their Farm Bureau had been offering health coverage, and when the ACA came online, the Obama administration looked at Tennessee and said, well, it's not necessarily health insurance, but they're still covering lives. We're going to let that slide through and continue to be done. So if it was bad, they could have ended it then, but they left it in place. And so other states' farm bureaus, I think we're up to 12 or 13 now, have been allowed by their state legislatures to sell health coverage to their members. So any Farm Bureau members in here, I would say 65 and under, because 65 is when the best thing that happened to my pops. He said, man, get on Medicare, but the best thing ever, because they pay for a whole lot of stuff. 65 and under, it's a method to bring young farmers and their families back to the farm because they can get that health coverage that normally would be crazy expensive. So go check out, talk to your local Farm Bureau agent. I think sometime in November, December is when they're going to roll it out, but should be very competitive, affordable plans. There was a family in the state of Kansas, a lot of kids, I think they had 6 or 7 kids, they saved $30,000 a year in health coverage because of this.
Brandon, let me ask you, there was a big thing when Prop A passed, and you guys did a repeal of some of that. You're a business guy. Tell me what your thoughts were when you started talking about paid sick leave and everything that was in Prop A.
Well, that one was an easy one for me, as you say, as a small business owner, but also so many of my friends and neighbors, small business owners, quite frankly, the idea of sick leave, no pun intended, was sickening. All the different ways that was going, that employees were potentially going to take advantage of their employers. I was, from the get-go on that one, that was something that I was more than happy to have the opportunity to make that fix. In my district, I know most people, most of them reach out to me either in person or by phone. I see them throughout the district, but it was crystal clear with my constituency that they simply did not like that. And obviously we vote as legislators, we vote on behalf of Missourians as a whole. We're voting for the state of Missouri. But we always have to listen first to our constituents. Of course, we've got to listen to our conscience and our own beliefs, but our constituents, and it was just crystal clear in my district. People did not like the idea of that sick leave. The business owners did not like the idea of the sick leave. Quite frankly, they despised it. That was an easy vote for me.
You're going to put people out of business, no question, if you didn't do that.
It will do that.
So let's ask about the stadiums. There was a special session before the publicized one that talked about stadiums. What all went into that?
You're talking about the first special session for the stadiums. Okay, so where did that come from is a question I get a lot. And last summer, when I was obviously running in the primary for my state senate race, I knocked a lot of doors in Clay County. Because obviously that's part of the district, as crazy as it sounds, along with Prairie Home over Cooper County and Fayette and Howard County. But in towns like Smithville, Liberty, Kearney, where I was knocking doors, talking to folks, that was the #1 recurring topic that came up on the doors. Of course, there was the other stuff, taxes, illegal immigration, you name it, it was there. But the #1 recurring question is, what are we going to do for the Chiefs and Royals? And that honestly took me a little bit by surprise by nature, but when you think about the geography of how close it is, that was the #1 question, what are we about the Chiefs and Royals? Because at that point in time, the state of Kansas had put incentives on the books to try and draw our 2 sports teams by offering to cover the cost of up to 70% of a new stadium. I'm a free market guy, and the free market goes out the window when you have an outside influence like the state of Kansas coming in to try and poach us, or poach our teams. And so from that point on, I kind of kept tracking it. Now mind you, in a primary, there's two different sets of voters. You have primary and general election voters, and then you have the people that just show up every November to win. Just look at your election turnout. I think in November it was around 65 or 70%. In August we're cooking somewhere around 25 or 30%. So I was talking with solid Republican voters in Clay County that wanted the state to step in and do something for the Chiefs and Royals. As I went around and came back this direction, I started asking and talking about it. Yeah, we need to do something. So all session long, I was in Governor, hey, are we doing anything yet? We're working on it. Economic Development Director Hadaway, we're doing something yet? We're working on it. So finally, towards the end of the session, they rolled out what I think was probably the best plan that they could have. I know there's a lot of opinions on the stadium bill and the financing and how that's going to work, but I'm going to probably tell you that every opinion is correct. At the end of the day, do I think it'd be awesome if every NFL owner would just pay for their own stadium? 100%, that would be great. But in theory, when Kansas offers to pay for 70% of it, as a business owner, you'd be an idiot not to take that deal up. How many people in here have ever been to a Chiefs or Royals game? How many people in here have never gone to a Chiefs or Royals game and never planned to go?
I've never been to a Royals game.
Have you been to a Cardinals game? Okay. If you do not spend money at Arrowhead Stadium or Kauffman Stadium, your tax dollars are not going to help finance this. That is probably the most absolute positive thing that I want to try and push across. We are going to take the revenue that they generate each and every year. I'm going to use $10 million for an example as a baseline revenue year. Those are dollars that they're collecting off of Joe Burrow when he comes in, would have been Albert Pujols when he played for the Cardinals, because they get taxed in the state of Missouri when they get their paycheck. That gets sent to us. We're going to take that baseline revenue and bond that dollar amount for a period of up to 30 years to cover up to 50% of the cost of a new stadium. And guess what? There is also, again, those clawback provisions. So if the Royals say move to Clay County, which I got Clay County, so I got to rep them a little bit. And 20 years down the road, they think that Nashville is a better place because Nashville was calling Nashville one of the Kansas City Royals. And the bond is not yet paid back. The Kansas City Royals then have to send all that money back to the state of Missouri. And so I felt like what we passed was a very reasonable, sound piece of legislation to at least put an offer out there. I can't guarantee that they're going to stay. But I felt like we had to do something to try to keep those crown jewels of the Midwest here.
Representative?
Yeah, let me talk about that for just a minute. I'm the right wing of the right wing in the House of Representatives. Everybody knows it. But there are certain things that make common sense. When this bill initially was presented to the House to give money to refurbish the stadium and so forth, I was a solid no vote. And I spoke against it because the government should have no interest in building a stadium. So I voted no, and I think maybe many people in this room would have voted no. And then I did my research, and what I found was, people say, well, we don't want to give money to millionaires. As Senator Gregory mentioned, the Hunt family doesn't get 10 cents of this money unless you purchase a ticket or a hot dog, and then they would receive benefit from it. All the monies are collected by the Jackson County Sports Authority, who leases the stadium to the Chiefs. The Chiefs have to pay to be in that stadium. The Jackson County Sports Authority is owned by you. It's owned by me. It's owned by the state of Missouri. It's a pass-through so that they can play football at that stadium. When the bill came up during special session, they added some things to it that made it more favorable to people like me that believe government doesn't have a business in doing that. They added an amateur sports tax credit to that piece of legislation. The amateur sports tax credit has made $90 million for the state of Missouri. That's why you have NCAA wrestling coming to Kansas City. That's why you have basketball tournaments, volleyball tournaments, archery tournaments in Branson because of that amateur sports tax credit. There's no way I could vote against that. And then disaster relief was added. 5 out of the 7 counties that my senator represents were eligible for that disaster relief. I cannot vote against something that provides them the necessary means to rebuild their homes and things like that. And the last reason I switched my vote to a yes during special session is I grew up in Michigan. I've been in the state of Missouri 37 years now, but I grew up in Michigan. And there was a map of the United States that we used to put together, Hollywood, or California had a Hollywood symbol on it. Michigan had a car. You know what Missouri had when I was growing up? A pig and a lead pipe. That's what Missouri was known for. Pigs and mining lead. Is that what we want the state of Missouri to be known for? So I was talking about it on the floor. I was convincing myself that chiefs are an economic benefit to the state of Missouri. They bring in tourist dollars. They bring in revenue. Boeing, that gets some subsidies, brings in revenue and provides jobs. Do we want to be a forward-thinking state that actually the benefits can be seen from the rest of the nation, or do we want to go back to pigs and lead? And that's why I switched my vote to vote for the stadium bill. It's the right thing to do economically. It's the right thing for the state of Missouri.
Representative Phelps?
Well, just quickly to throw out some numbers. So, and these are 2023 numbers, but the financial impact of the state of Missouri from the Chiefs alone, this is not Chiefs and Royals, but from the Chiefs alone, $993 million. It's almost $1 billion from the Chiefs alone. Jobs, the Chiefs alone, 5,860 jobs in 2023, and actually the Royals employ more. They have more employees than the Chiefs because they've got more home games. And the Kansas City Chiefs directly impact our general revenue. In 2023, they impacted that with $28.8 million, not to mention the dollars that are going to the city of Kansas City and Jackson County. So this is something also that when we're thinking about economic development across the state, sometimes what you want to do is different than what you need to do. And so for the business owners in the room, you understand that sometimes buying that new piece of equipment doesn't really feel good. When you've got to write that check or get the bank loan, buying that piece of equipment doesn't always feel good, but you have to make investments for the future. And so this is not spending money, this is taking their dollars, the dollars they generate and send to us and reinvesting those dollars. But their impact is something that the state of Missouri, quite frankly, cannot afford to lose.
Say what?
Thank you. I'm going to hold up 3 fingers so I do this real quick. I don't know whether it'll be coherent enough for you to understand it, but I'm going to say 3 things about this. Number 1, I have in front of me the tax collections from the entertainers and athletes tax for the first quarter of the year, so July, August, and September. So you get an idea of what that is. So, of course, athletes, everybody should understand that, any player that shows up there, etc. The entertainers, if Brian and I go put on a comedy show, what we have to pay for them. My daughter, my granddaughter didn't like me telling her that either. Non-resident professional entertainers in September, they paid the state $28,801. Non-resident professional athletes paid the state of Missouri $1,050,306.56. Cumulative for the year, so those 3 months were $8,095,000 is how much has come up, thanks to your losing Cardinals and the Chiefs and the Royals.
It hurts, but it's true.
So that's the tax that he's talking about. If those things don't happen, of course, do we collect the tax? If we just shut the key off, no, we don't collect that one anyway. So that's money's given away. Guys, I'm going to say 3 things. Number 2 is the clawback. Some of us sitting in, at least up here, know why the clawback was put in. It was because of what the Rams happened with Edward D. Jones now. There was no clawback, so any guarantees the state, city, St. Louis City or St. Louis County, they were just out, those dollars. The clawback I put in here, so the stuff that Senator Gregory talked about is in there. You can read it. I think it's 25 years. You get every cent back, and then after that, through 30 years, there's a percentage that comes back. The third thing, the old guy in the room for sure with Missouri politics, yeah, even counting you, I was around pay attention to this kind of stuff even though I was an ag teacher for a long time. I called a previous senator that I'm friends with, that Scott over here says the reason why I got elected. And we talked about a sports complex in our state that out of principle, and Brian out of principle said we shouldn't be voting for that, right? And he did the research. So out of principle, just out of principle, don't do it. But when that decision was made, out of the state budget, out of state business, out of motel business, restaurant business, retail business, it was a stupid decision. Now, he wouldn't say that, so don't call and tell him that I said stupid while I'm thinking of him. And here's what I'm thinking. I've got the number 3. Where was the NASCAR racetrack supposed to be? Where does my wife go buy furniture? Where do I go to Cabela's? Where do I take my kids? And I hate to break news to all of us, but when you go to that place, there's a Missouri license plate beside mine. And that's what I'm concerned about, along with the trees. If those of you don't know what I'm talking about the legends that was built up around the NASCAR track. Some of us that are old enough remember that they were working really diligently to get that at the south end of Platte County, north end of Clay County, and we said, hell no, we don't want it. And it went over there, and we've lost a lot of tax money with that.
So anyway, you got the microphone, and why I text that senator to tell me what you said. You had a special session last month, and you carried some legislation to change the congressional maps. Can you give the high points and how that would affect specifically this part of the state?
Yes, certainly. I was the senator that carried the legislation that would change our map to what we affectionately call 7-1. That will should make it more difficult for Representative Cleaver to be able to be reelected, and should make it easier for somebody that wants to run on the Republican side to get elected. There are people, both Republican and Democrat, that like that, and there are people, both Republican, not very many Democrats, but there are for sure Republicans that do like it, and Republicans upset with me because I was the one that carried that through the House. I think the biggest thing for me to mention, Scott, in a group, I see some guy recording over there, when we went through this at the beginning, I was in the legislature, we did that 7-1 back and forth, we did 7-1 back and forth. This is the way I look at it. Remember the dumb ag teacher from Northwest Missouri. If we would have failed in the courts, if we would have done it in the legislature when we did the maps for 22, and it would have went to the courts, the new map, 7-1 map would have went to the courts. This is why I get beat up. If the court would have said no, if the court said no, it's not right, we got to do another one. By the time we got done with that, folks, it was the end of May, the courts could have very well been the ones in charge of drawing our congressional maps. That's what I was scared of. You can talk to me later why I was scared of that. This time, I believe, if the courts do make the choice that what we passed, Scott, is wrong, they decide for some reason, that district thing's not real, or at least that's what's been, I've looked at it and called people and they said it's not real. But if the courts do overturn it, what map will we go back to? We will go back to the current, so we won't be going to a possible 5-3 map or something like that. Legislature's still in control. It was a difficult thing. You recognize, nobody sitting there knows that I also chaired the committee that all that stuff went through. It was, for a Senate committee, it was a fairly long committee meeting, and, kind of like me going to these meetings, get you used to being told you're not a very good guy. And I sat through that and carried that piece of legislation. It took about 6 hours to pass. We used the PQ that some people here know about, you and I know about. And all those things are difficult to do, but I felt like it's the right thing for me to do. Thank you.
Representative Phelps?
Thanks, Scott. I wanted to point out on those maps, there's been a lot of confusion because lots of times I would hear from people and they will say, well, what you did is not legal. The Constitution says that you cannot do that. And they are just partially correct. The Constitution says that we cannot reapportion those districts more than once every 10 years following the decennial census. Reapportioning would mean changing the population within those districts. Those districts are 769,000 people right now. That's what they're going to be after this change, when this change takes effect. But that same language in our Constitution, it's Article 3, Section 10. While we cannot reapportion, we can redraw those district lines for public convenience as needed. And so what we did was we changed those district lines for public convenience as needed, and we did not reapportion a thing. So according to Article 3, Section 10 in the Constitution, we did exactly what we are required and what we are able to do. It does say that not only may we do it, it says we shall do it. We also have a Supreme Court ruling in Missouri from 1910, Majors versus Patterson, that says we are allowed to do this. We did exactly what we not only may, but that we shall do. So just remember, when someone's telling you that we're in the wrong, tell them we would have been in the wrong had we reapportioned. We did not do that. We just changed the lines.
Before we get to some questions, there's one other thing in that special session. Representative Seitz, can you talk about initiative petition reform?
Yeah, absolutely. Something we needed to have done years ago. We've been talking about that since I've been in the House of Representatives, and that's 5 years, and I know Rusty can attest we've been talking about that for a longer time than that. We need to elevate our Constitution. It's too easy for outside influences to change the Constitution of Missouri. I was okay with medical marijuana, because even biblically you give strong drink to those that are perishing. If someone needs it, as a remedy for pain or something like that. I was not that hip on recreational marijuana, and some of you may utilize that. It's not any of my business. But our Constitution was changed by outside influences and outside money. Initiative petition reform says that 8 out of 8 congressional districts have to agree to change the Constitution. This makes it harder for Republicans to change the Constitution, and it makes it harder for Democrats to change the Constitution. We have to come together as Missourians and say together that a change needs to be made. And that's what we did through initiative petition reform. Some people say, well, that's against democracy, or one person, one vote. No, it counts for one person, one vote. It's still 50% of the voters in the state plus one vote. That changes the Constitution, but that has to be agreed on by all 8 congressional districts. It doesn't take away anyone's vote, and we're not a democracy. Democracy leads to anarchy, which leads to socialism, which leads to totalitarianism. We are a representative republic, and this initiative petition reform will emphasize that the majority of Missourians believe so strongly, the whole of Missouri believes so strongly that our Constitution should be changed, that we'll do that. And it will negate the outside influences and outside money.
Thank you so much. Let's take a few questions if you all got time. Why don't we start? Anybody here in the center got a question? You're doing professionally. I recognize that notebook. Anybody got anything they want to ask? I know we covered a lot, but go ahead. I'll come right over to you, ma'am. There you go.
How do you change the Constitution without initiative petition? How do you do it now? Is it a vote by the representatives in the Senate?
I'll start. So if you're ever looking at legislation and you see SJR or HJR, that means that it has to go to the vote of the people because it's going to be in the Constitution. We can change statutes in Jefferson City without a vote of the people, but constitutionally it has to be voted of the people. So when you see HJR, SJR, that means it's going to the Constitution. And when we put it on the ballot, it's 50 plus 1 at that point. Is that correct,
Right.
gentlemen? And that's the way it will stay even after this initial petition reform change. If it passes, correct.
Sir, you have something?
You mentioned that the IP reform bill is going to minimize or eliminate outside money. Can you explain where the danger of that outside money is and how the IP reform is going to end it?
Right, absolutely. Outside the influences, outside money, we often call that dark money, has affected our Constitution in numerous ways, including Amendment number 3 and the constitutional change there. The marijuana amendment was actually, I think, 37 pages long. No one read those 37 pages. There's issues in there such as there's an Office of DEI created for Missouri Public Schools that's within that legislation, and nobody knew it because it was 37 pages long and no one read it. We have to have, through initiative petition reform now, fair ballot language, concise ballot language that you can see exactly what you're voting on.
Sir.
For Senator Gregory, I'd like to know what criteria you use to decide whether you're going to vote yes or no on a bill.
There's a whole lot of thought that goes in between the ears up here. Number one, I read through it, try to make the best opinionated guess that I can. I try to think of how it's going to have an everyday effect on people, whether it's good or bad. In my opinion, how the people are going to think about it. And there's times where I'll call folks that might be subject matter experts. Sheriff's back there, if there's a sheriff's bill, I don't know if I've talked about anything yet, but I know I have talked to a few sheriffs before. I know I spoke with Sheriff Willake in Clay County about some issues. But yeah, just really try and go through it and put a lot of deep thought into it, and kind of what I think the best conclusion is. You heard some of those thought processes on Senate Bill 4 of how I thought through that one.
So you don't consider constitutionality or whether it grows government or it opens free markets in any of your criteria?
No, I try and think through most every issue in every angle possible. The committee process weighs a lot through it, and listening to people that do come and testify, and then reading through those witness testimonies.
Well, I have to ask this because it's already brought up, the 33 pages that snuck into the Constitution, because it wasn't read. Nobody read it. I think that's a bigger problem than what's really known to the constituents out there.
You're speaking on the recreational.
What I'm getting
Is that correct?
to, what I'm getting to is, you guys don't read the bills. You made that admission the other night.
So with all due respect, is what I said was, Senate Bill 4 was comprised of 4, 5, and 6. 4, 5, and 6 came to the utility committee, of which I read those bills as they came to the utility committee. And so then I read all of them.
I'm happy to come back to you, but let's let a few other folks ask them. Do you have a question, sir? Does anybody else?
Read the bill before you vote yes or no on it in the future.
Yes.
Does anybody else?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this is for Curtis. You voted no on SB 63. And it's the only vote that I could find where you voted no all session. Why did you vote no?
On that particular one, that was homeschoolers in sports. That was an issue that I had heard from a lot of my school administrators about. And in talking through it as an athlete myself, there is no requirement for a homeschooled kid at that point in time to show their grades to the school they're trying to play sports in. And so that's one, I know it's an issue, I know there's a lot of people out there, and I don't have a problem with homeschool kids playing. But as an athlete on a team, that I had my teammates not get to play games because they didn't have grades, I did not think it would be fair for a kid to come in and play on a team that does not have to prove they're getting grades to play sports that Friday night or the basketball game on Tuesdays and Fridays or Saturdays. That was the reason why I looked at that one and said, I don't want to vote for that.
See what's up? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'm Amy Weber. I'm at Fitzgibbon Hospital in Marshall, Missouri. And as a rural resident, and a lot of the people here are rural residents, hospitals are key to the rural lifestyle, to our quality of life, and to the health of our people. Rural hospitals are hurting. We have had many hospitals close in the last 5 years. We know that Medicaid cuts are coming, and I would just like to know from each of you, what is your plan to protect and ensure that more rural hospitals don't unnecessarily close, and that the lives of expectant mothers are protected, as well as senior citizens, that they have an emergency place to go?
I'll start and then pass it on down the line. Something that I learned about this year that kind of floored me, some of the FQHCs like Katy Trail, also HCC, I learned that the Medicaid payments from the state are slow to arrive, to the tune of sometimes a year or two for full reimbursement. So I would like to see that sped up because, as we all know, that have to pay bills. If the money's not there, you can't exactly pay the bill. So I'd like to work through that process to make sure that goes through quicker. I think the more people that we can get with some type of coverage, the Farm Bureau health plans that I referenced, I'm hoping that helps. Because when they walk through the door, instead of having no coverage, now they might have someone that you know you're going to get a check from at the end of the day. And then with the federal government, I hope that I heard there's supposed to be a fund coming down, maybe Mr. Senator Kurtis Gregory knows something about that. That's supposed to be kind of a stopgap for our rural hospitals.
Well, I've had meetings with, I believe Stephanie Gooden was at the meeting where we met with the state of Missouri to actually get your checks hurried up. I don't know if you knew about that or not, we never heard from you, but we were had several meetings of trying to speed the process up. And I mean, it's just ridiculous. If the money is sitting there and it's owed, there's no reason for it to be months in arrears.
We don't want her that in mind, because she wants to know my plan to save rural hospitals. And I don't have a plan. Okay? We're in a position that it's going to continue to go down. That's why I represent 19 counties, right? We don't have the population we did. And our population, when they can, drive to a city somewhere to get their health care rather than getting it at home. And those are the paying customers that a hospital needs to come through the door. The new money that I think it was only Kurtis talked about, or you probably know as much about this as I do, or close. Kurt Matthews going through trying to get our first grant sent and written and approved. There's going to be so many dollars. You know all this, right? So many dollars on that. They come to our state, no matter what our state is compared to Connecticut or New Hampshire or Rhode Island. Everybody gets so many dollars, and then the rest of it's going, the other half's going to come out in grants. We're going to have to hope that we do as good a job, and Senator Hawley, since it's his money that he put in, and he can put his thumb on the scale. But I learned this, that the point system, have you seen anything about the point system put out? I've not seen it. I was told about it yesterday. The point system, one of the things that I've tried to do, I'm one of the people that want to get rid of some regulations, let more providers work. So I'm a proponent of nurse practitioners in our state. Those of you that don't want to be nurse practitioners, I know we got a vet in the back, he's probably totally against them. If we could allow them to provide more services, I think it would help our rural hospitals be able to do that instead of what is the number 6 nurse practitioners per collaborator. They've got to have those contracts and stuff. That is harming, maybe not this area, but it's harming Northwest Missouri tremendously, the fact that we can't use those to their ability. And in the point system, I was told yesterday, that states like ours that are the most restrictive, that column is worth 100 points. Missouri's going to get 0 of those points, because you're shaking your head like you know that.
I was told through the Missouri Hospital Association that the point system is designed to, on this rural transformation program, that states who enact transformative legislation that someone in Washington or someone outside our state believes societally that needs to occur are going to get more points for that. So it's a grant-based system. And as a rural hospital, we cannot continue to administer these transformative programs because we don't have the acumen or the Masters of Public Health educated folks to administer a grant-based program to do X, Y, Z. We'll spend all of the money that's designed to prop us up right now to administer and implement some transformative program that may or may not be sustainable.
Yeah.
And that's where it's headed.
The point value that I talked about is what I was told. I haven't seen it. The transformative thing that you're talking about, yes, I've heard pieces of that, not very much of it. And as somebody that taught school for 33 years and lived on grant programs, that was pretty normal. That you get $100, you spend $75 trying to get the $100, and $25 of it does any good. Okay. Appropriation-wise in our state, trying to be able to get the systems, keep improving the systems to be able to get the money out faster is something that I recognize is going on. We've got problems down there with our movers system. We'll see if we can get some of it fixed.
I was for 4 years on the Healthcare Reform Committee. My wife was a nurse for 18 years before she retired, so this kind of hits home. Especially as a senior, there's a tsunami of healthcare needs coming. I've been shouting about this in the State House for 5 years now. We need all hands on deck. We need the hospitals built. We need them energized. We need them fixed. We need them brought up to technological standards. And we have to open the state up to more residencies. And if we're going to train them here, we need to provide incentives so that they can stay here. Instead of, we train them, we spend all the money, and then they go to Kansas or they go to Oklahoma or something like that. We need to provide Iowa. We need to provide incentives and open up residencies. Also, the J-1 visa programs. When my wife went through her cancer journey, she had a double mastectomy and lost the center section of her right lung. We spent a lot of time in Cox Hospital, and at first I thought, okay, I'm the right wing of the right wing. I want Americans doing everything. I want to provide Americans jobs. The health care that we received from the Filipino nurses was outstanding. They wanted to be there. They wanted to work. The hugs that were given, they went above and beyond what some of the other nurses and practitioners did. So if there is a tsunami of healthcare needs coming, we're going to have to open up those J-1 visa programs to bring more qualified people into the hospitals, and that they're willing to work. They're not looking to be in a metropolitan area where they can make more money and the cost of living is higher. These individuals want to work in a rural community. It's just fine with them. They think it's great to be in America and they can provide care, but we need to open the state up to more residencies.
I actually speak quite frequently to our CEO. It's an uphill battle, and I'm sure you understand this. It's an uphill battle which you deal with regularly with the insurance companies, specifically in pre-authorization, and now the new thing in recent years is post-authorization, just driving our hospital crazy in the time and the resources they need to dedicate to post-authorization. Now I'm hearing also that insurance companies delaying payment because of internal policy changes that are made frequently, sometimes multiple times a month. And so, of course, the hospital signs a contract with the carrier, and then that carrier changes their internal policies throughout the year, and of course, they hold back your payment until you dot the I and cross the T the way they want you to. So those are things we're going to certainly look to address. Obviously, it's going to be difficult. That's an uphill battle. But we've got to address pre and post authorizations and the at will of these insurance companies to change internal policy as a strategy. They're doing it as a strategy to hold payment. Everybody knows that. So, we're going to work on that. I don't know that we have the answers right at the moment, but we're going to try to figure them out.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to ask a clarifying question, since it was cut off earlier. I believe Senator Gregory was saying that he had read all of the bills as they came through committees, and then they were combined into one, and so he had already read them all, so therefore he has read it, and he voted on it. I think that's correct, I'll ask. And then someone else on the panel was talking about a marijuana bill, or marijuana amendment that was on the ballot that had not been read in its entirety. That person was talking about the voters not reading it in its entirety.
Right,
Not the legislators
Right,
not
that's
reading
correct.
it.
I read all 37 pages, but when it goes on the ballot, you get a short synopsis, 52 words or so, and that's what you think you're voting on, not a 37-page change to our Constitution. But that did not come from the legislature. That came through initiative petition, and it's not something that we, were voting on or something like that. It's the general public. We, as voters, we need to read these things, not just what's put on the ballot.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that I believe the legislators were saying that they did read it, but oftentimes the voters aren't reading everything because what they see on the ballot is this much. And they could read as much as this much that's posted on a wall at the polling location, but to read the whole amendment, I don't know very many voters who do that, but the legislators do.
And that was my take on Proposition A, which was the paid sick leave. For the most, I knew that was there, but if you ever watched the ads, I never really saw a television ad that talked about paid sick leave portion. I heard $15 an hour minimum wage. And they led with that for a reason, because that sounds great. But then the paid sick leave provision, once that passed and I started getting phone calls from business owners, this is incredible. That I don't think that people knew that was actually in there, because I had businesses saying, we actually offer a better PTO policy than what this paid sick leave provision is. But since this is on here, we have to get rid of our PTO policy that is better than what we're now going to be required by law to offer.
If you guys have a question, I appreciate everybody coming out. I'll come back to folks if that's one. Nobody else has anything?
That's nice damage control on reading the bills, but I don't buy it. You said what you said. You said you did not read the full bill before you voted on it. But instead of beating you up on that, I'm more interested to know, why did, of all the legislation that passed this last session, that received so much Democratic support? Of all the legislation that passed in the last session, why did it receive so much Democratic support?
Well, I will say that this is something that drives me wild in the media. You will generally see the headline bills. For us this year, that's obviously the maps. I don't think the Democrat voted for the maps, guys. I don't think they voted for initiative petition reform. Those are party line votes. Same thing when we passed the SAVE Act and SAFE Act. I think Representative Seitz carried those also. Party line votes, those get the big media attention and headlines. Then let's say those are 2 out of 10. Then I think you have about 2 out of 10 where you're going to have majority of both sides vote for it. You're going to have a couple Democrats maybe cross the line, a couple Republicans vote no, get a little bit. But then you have a lot of just great policy for the state of Missouri that is bipartisan. Farm Bureau health plans, 1 no vote in the Missouri House. So everyone that was there that day voted for it. I think I had a wide array of Democrats vote for that house because they realized it was good policy for the state of Missouri to have something out there for affordable health coverage for people that are members of the Missouri Farm Bureau. And if you're not, you can join. And so that is why I think it was that we were churning out very good red meat legislation. along with legislation that Democrats saw good pieces of also.
This question applies to everybody except Mark Nolte. I want to talk about PACs. So generally speaking, close to 50% of your campaign funds received in your personal fund, campaign funds is about 50% from PACs. When you look at your own individual PACs, it's much higher. My question is, how does a little voter like me who wants to donate $10 have the influence to go against somebody giving you hundreds of thousands?
I take the people like in this room, they give me money. The person that gives you, the way you look at it, if someone gives me $10, I view them as a committed voter. They're going to go to the polls and they're going to vote for me. And that is what matters the absolute most to me, is the individual donors and voters.
You said me, right? You want to talk to each one of us? Everybody but this guy. All right. I accept PAC money. I've donated money to PACs. PACs are made up of people. I don't know what's the majority, but a lot of them. Ag teachers had a PAC. The career tech ed had a PAC. So the organizations I was in, so I accept that money from them. I've turned down money from 3 that during my time here, and one of them's not that bad a group. Most people in here would think it would be good, but I didn't want to get teachers all wound up, so I didn't accept that money. But it's people's money too. The difference between a $10 donation, a $5 donation, and a $10,000 donation, I don't think makes any difference. One of the people that supported me quite a bit, after I won a primary, of course we've known each other for years, he said, I'll never call you about discussing how you're going to vote on legislation or giving you anything. Guess what he's done since that point? We talk to each other, but he's never called one time and said one thing to me. He just thought I was good enough guy to get elected.
Number one, I don't give a hoot who gives me money. It's irrelevant to me. I received for the past 5 years $250 in a check from the Missouri Pork Producers Association. No one's brought any bacon, they've not brought any ham, they've not come in there to ask me to vote this way or that way on any legislation. So I stick the $250 in the bank and I buy signs and I buy radio and I buy newspaper advertising. What a person donates should be basically irrelevant. With Cleaner Missouri, we're not allowed to have a lobbyist bring us together. It used to be back in the old days, they could ask for 8 Republicans and 8 Democrats and get together and go to Colton's and buy them a 6-ounce steak. And that's how you got to know each other, and they would advocate for their legislation. It didn't buy anybody's vote, but it brought us together and gave us more commonality so we could talk about the issues and see what people. Now we're not allowed to do that. Basically, I don't have a PAC myself. I vote for school choice, even though in Branson Hollister we have excellent public schools, and the superintendents know I speak about that all the time. But because I vote for school choice, I receive money from a school choice PAC. It doesn't influence my vote. I have very few lobbyists walk through my office, and I think I can say that for everyone here. You have people that represent you both on the House side and Curtis and Rusty on the Senate side, who are men, and we have women in there as well, men and women of integrity. If your vote can be bought by $250 from a pork producer, then you shouldn't be in the House or Senate. And but it takes money to buy signs, it takes money to buy advertising and so forth to get our messages out. So I don't condemn the lobbyists for doing that. I'm all for transparency. But I think you have men of character up here. And again, I don't give a hoot who gives me what. I really don't care.
I would echo those exact words. I too receive money from PACs. I give money to PACs. Most of those PACs are made up of actually very small donations. I can tell you this, lobbyists run around that building all day long. It's their job, right? That's their living. And lobbyists establish relationships and build rapport with legislators because that's their job. Now, every time that you're voting with a lobbyist that you know, you're voting against another lobbyist that you know. Every time you vote with some PAC that may have given you money, you're voting against some other PAC that may have given you money. In those examples, I'm sure the legislators up here could come up with gobs of them. One that hits my mind right now is I get strong support from the realtors. But the realtors they're adamant, they're dead set against IP reform. But I was 100% in on IP reform. I really didn't care what they thought about it. If they want to not give my PAC money in the future, if they don't want to give money to my campaign in the future because I voted contrary to what they liked on IP reform, so be it. There's also a lot of things that I vote on, PACs that I vote with their agenda or with the issues that they support, and I don't ever see any money out of them. There is no rhyme or reason. The idea, though, that PAC money is a bad thing, it's not. We give to PACs, quite frankly, as much as we do get from PACs. Now, to your question, and I appreciate the question, how do you make your voice count? Sure, we listen. And I can tell you this for a fact. If I have a constituent call me or call my office or email my office, for a fact, they get a response sooner than any special interest group or any lobbyist.
I'm glad you do that. I emailed the two gentlemen on the end and never heard a response back. I would like to say one more thing about PACs. I looked at a lot of campaign finance filings, and there are PACs that have the same address. And on one side, you're receiving a contribution, and then on another side, you're paying out a contribution to another PAC with the same address. It looks like campaign money laundering. How can you change the laws to prevent that?
Well, I would like to know when the emails were sent first off, because I don't recall getting one. A lot of times, PAC treasurers are at the same address for different PACs. There's a certain amount of people that control a certain amount of things down there, so that might be what you're referencing.
When you folks have voted for Clean Missouri and Cleaner Missouri, placed that in our Constitution, you said the only thing that I can do for my personal PAC, Great Northwest PAC, is to ask people to donate to that. I don't get to control where the money leaves that PAC.
Don't believe that.
You what?
Don't believe that.
Well, I'm telling you my truth, and it is the truth. I do not touch mine. There was money that left mine and went places that I was opposed to, and I don't control where those dollars go. So, ma'am, that's what, if you voted for that, you all put it in the Constitution that we no longer have control of those, and I think that has hurt transparency within politics myself.
What are we going to do about some PSC reform and getting some ag-focused directors on the PSC commission so we can protect the interests of farmland?
That is something that we have tried, I believe. I think the idea was 3 years ago it first popped up, of kind of like the Soil and Water Commission, of trying to get more agricultural-minded people on there. And I think the matter is trying to find the right number. Is there 5 commissioners right now, Senator? I think the initial one was to take it up to 12, but I know you start running into money and budgetary issues there, because those are paid positions. They do have staff to support them. Then where does it go from there? If you say so many have to be from agricultural, then are you then going to say that so many have to be from industry, then so many have to be an engineer? So trying to find that balance, but I do know that that is something we have looked at and we're working on to try and have the requirement of people in agriculture on the PSC.
I'm not carried the legislation, but there has been legislation, you know that, probably filed to say that there's going to be one person that's ag-related on there. I'm one of the people that have proposed to different ag groups. Don't necessarily worry about getting legislation proposed. You may want legislation passed, but right now, we went through Governor Parsons, it was friendly to agriculture. Let's get a good quality name from an agricultural background or agriculture, and let's give that name to them so they can go ahead and put it on. With Governor Kehoe now there, I think another person that cares about agriculture, I think that's the fastest way to do it. We may get the legislation passed someday, and we may not.
In response to the hospital person a minute ago, you were talking about the use of mid-level practitioners to extend healthcare capabilities in terms of health reform and transformation. Is there anybody actively looking at the licensing provisions of the state law for nurse practitioners and physician assistants and all the mid-level practitioners? And what's the likelihood that any of that will be changed or extended so that we can take advantage of those folks?
State of Missouri is the most restrictive state in the United States on allowing nurse practitioners to practice. Having a daughter practice in Illinois, I don't know why she decided to come back to Missouri, but she did because she was well on her way to being transitioned to practice on her own. When we say I up here, and I'm going to use the word I or the letter I here in a minute, it takes everybody to get stuff passed. So I help get rid of the mileage requirement. You know, you had to be within 75 miles to do that. There was 12 things total in that bill that made changes that helped nurse practitioners be allowed to practice a long ways from being able to transition to where they can practice without having a doctor supervising them at all times. It's difficult because from the medical professional side, we have a person there who's highly trained in medicine. That group of people, and maybe you're a doctor, don't want to release the control that you have today over those people. And when we discuss about ability for somebody to come to Chillicothe closed the OB. We closed the OB because they couldn't get a second OB doctor to show up there because we have a really good one, but he can't practice 365 days a year and be there 24 hours a day because of emergency stuff. I don't know whether this is true, nurse or hospital administrator, but I was told they offered somebody $800,000. It wasn't told officially, it was through the grapevine group. They offered somebody to come up there, if they could live in Kansas City, but would you come work in Chillicothe? They offered them $800,000 plus another $100,000 just to come there, and the answer's no. People coming out because of shortage, etc., won't do that. When I talk to doctors about allowing nurse practitioners, one where I work at, say fine. I'm not seeing my doctors in 4 years. I'm a diabetic. I always see a nurse practitioner because he doesn't have time. Those providers don't mind opening it up a little bit, but it's the ones that I believe come out of the cities and stuff that stop at Missouri. I'm not giving you an answer. I've tried. Senator Schroeder has tried, and it's a heck of an uphill battle.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm actually physician assistant Air Force trained. I practice primary care medicine in the Air Force. You haven't said anything about PAs. And I can tell you that I sat in a clinic and saw 45 patients a day, every day of the week. I had surgery days. I was also involved with cardiology, but we were considered dependent practitioners at that time. There's a move to make PAs independent practitioners across the United States. And if I work for the federal government, I can act that way. I can practice medicine that way. I do not practice in the state of Missouri because of the restrictions that are here. And it's unfortunate because I bring almost 50 years of experience in healthcare, and I'm still willing to see patients on a regular basis. So I don't know who we need to engage down there at the state level, but I'm willing to take that on.
The engagement is happening.
Yeah.
You can also come and help testify and try to get that accomplished. But at this point in time, in our capital, enough people that are concerned about letting my daughter be able to practice without having that collaborative practice agreement. And with the limit of 6, we just can't provide enough providers the PA stuff. We've got friends in the legislature, one of them just turned out, son's a PA, he's not coming to Missouri to practice. He's practicing in Nebraska, I think. So that it's
All kinds of locations where I could practice. I'm from Missouri and I just decided to retire here.
I've got nurse practitioners living in my district that practice over Zoom in other states because they can practice there and live and play our low taxes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank everybody for bumping up on 8 o'clock. I appreciate everybody's time. Kurtis, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you all for showing up tonight. Always try to email me. We appreciate when people come to the Capitol to testify on issues. That's one thing I learned when I was on Missouri Corn Grower Association was if you're not down there to tell your story, then we as legislators are going to kind of make up our own assumption. So I encourage you, if there's an issue you find yourself passionate about, come down to Jefferson City, testify. It's sometimes scary, but it's really not that bad. There's a chair, you sit in front of us, you can testify, tell us how you think. Come to our offices, talk with us. I will always go out of my way to meet with you if you come to my office and visit. So let's give these guys a round of applause for coming. Brown's got to drive to Branson. Trevor's got to go to the road. Justin's got to go to Chillicothe. Archer's got to go back to Higginsville. But thank you all again for coming out. I appreciate it so much.